My work best friend confessed, I'm in love with someone. But he's married. I laughed, who is it? She smirked, our manager. My smile faded. She didn't know I was his wife. That night, I set up a fake date and told her to meet him at a restaurant. When she arrived, she found me sitting there instead. Her jaw dropped as I whispered, surprise. Now let's wait for him to show up. I'm a 36-year-old woman living in Chicago. I was married. For 8 years. His name is Alex. We both worked in the same company, big marketing firm downtown. He was the department manager. I was a brand strategist. We didn't tell anyone at work we were married. We kept it separate, professional. Different last names, no pictures on our desks. It was our rule. It worked. Until it didn't. About 10 months ago, a new hire joined our team. Her name was Melina. She was the type to walk into a room and get attention instantly. Loud, pretty, charming, always smiling. Everyone liked her right away. Including me. She was fun. She made boring meetings more bearable. She called me her work wife. We'd go for lunch, grab drinks after work, message each other memes all day. We got close fast. I shared stuff with her. She shared stuff with me. I even gave her dating advice. She said she always fell for the wrong guys. I had no idea she was sleeping with my husband. So here's what happened. It was a Thursday afternoon. We were on lunch break, sitting outside at Lou Malnati's on the patio. Normal day. She was giggling, talking about how weird her morning was, and then out of nowhere she says, I have to tell you something. I'm in love. I laughed. With who this time? She smiled like she was telling me a secret. Someone at work. I just raised my eyebrow. Please don't say the new intern. She leaned in closer. He's married. I rolled my eyes. Seriously? She nodded. But it's real. I feel it. I think he feels it too. I asked her who it was. I didn't expect her to answer. But she did. It's Alex. I blinked. Alex, our manager Alex? She nodded again. He's so smart. And the way he looks at me? I swear, it's not just in my head. We've talked a lot. After hours. Sometimes we stay late and, she trailed off. I forced a laugh. I tried to play it off. So you're into the boss now? She smiled like a teenager with a crush. He's different. He's not like the others. He's just stuck. I think his marriage is basically over. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. My heart was pounding. I felt like throwing up. She kept talking. I know it sounds crazy, but I really think we could be something. I couldn't even fake it anymore. I told her I needed to take a call and rushed to the bathroom. Locked myself in a stall and cried. Quietly. So no one would hear. Melina had no idea she just confessed to having an affair with my husband. And here's the thing. I wasn't even shocked about Alex. Deep down, something had been off. He'd been cold. Distant. Coming home late more often. Always had some excuse. I asked once if something was going on. He said no. I let it go. Now I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his stuff out. I just lay there next to him, staring at the ceiling, thinking. I wanted to break her the way she broke me. But I wasn't going to yell or get revenge in some messy way. I wanted to look her in the eye when she found out. I wanted her to feel it. So the next day, I made a plan. I texted her like everything was normal. Hey, I have someone I think you should meet. She replied fast. OMG who? I played it cool. Told her it was a surprise date. Someone she already knew. Someone mysterious. Someone who could actually be the real thing. I hyped it up like I was doing her a favor. She started guessing names. Then she asked, wait, is it who I think it is? I replied with a wink. Maybe. She was excited. I gave her a time and place, Saturday night. 8 p.m. RPM Italian, nice restaurant in River North. She said she'd be there early. She froze. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Like her brain was trying to explain what she was seeing. I smiled. Hi Melina. She blinked fast. What is this? I tilted my head. Surprise. Have a seat. She didn't sit right away. She looked around like maybe it was a setup, maybe someone else would come in. But it was just me. Finally, she sat. Slowly. Quietly. Her hands were shaking. I said it straight, I'm Alex's wife. She gasped. What? No. You're kidding. I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture. Me and Alex. On vacation. Then one from our wedding day. Then one of us with our dog. She went pale. I didn't know, she whispered. I leaned forward. He told you he was married, didn't he? Her eyes welled up. He said it was complicated. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. You didn't think to ask more questions? I asked. She just stared at me. Then I said, let's wait for him to show up. She looked like she wanted to run. I watched the door. A few minutes later, Alex walked in. He looked casual. Relaxed. Probably expecting to see her alone. But then he saw us. He stopped mid-step. His face dropped. Like someone punched him in the gut. I watched him freeze. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. I smiled. He didn't move. Melina turned to look at him. You said you were separated, she said quietly. He didn't answer. She stood up fast. Grabbed her purse. I'm sorry, she whispered to me, tears in her voice, and walked out of the restaurant. He went to follow her. That's where it is right now. There's more, but I'll post that later. I still don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just needed to say it out loud. Maybe someone else out there is going through the same thing. Maybe this helps. He sat across from me in that restaurant for maybe 20 minutes. Didn't say much. Just stared at the table like it had answers. I asked him how long it had been going on. He said, a few months. I asked him if he loved her. He shook his head. It wasn't like that. That pissed me off more than anything. So what was it? I said. Fun? A little work stress relief? He didn't answer. I got up and left him there. Saturday night I didn't go home. I stayed at my sister's place in Pilsen. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to get her to pour a strong drink and hand me a blanket. On Sunday, I didn't hear from him. No calls. No texts. He just went quiet. Like he was hoping if he stayed silent long enough, the mess would disappear. Then came Monday. I walked into the office around 8:50. Usual time. Quiet halls. I got a couple weird looks, but nothing major. At 9:15, my phone pinged. Can you come to HR? 5th floor. Conference room B. That's when I knew. I stood up and walked there slowly. My heart was already racing. When I walked in, 2 HR managers were sitting at the table. One of them smiled too politely. There's been a complaint. I sat down. From who? They looked at each other. Then the woman said, from Melina. I froze. She filed a formal complaint over the weekend, she continued. She said she felt coerced into an inappropriate relationship by a senior manager. She also said you set her up in a situation that made her feel unsafe. My mouth fell open. You're kidding. They weren't. She described an incident at RPM Italian, where you allegedly arranged a misleading date and confronted her in a public setting, which she found distressing. I stared at them. She was sleeping with my husband. They didn't flinch. We're aware of the conflict, which is why we're trying to handle this fairly. But this kind of situation should have been brought to us, not handled, personally. She told me herself, I said. I didn't trap her. She bragged about it. Did you record that conversation? They asked. I didn't. Of course I didn't. So now it was her word against mine. That whole week was a blur. HR suspended both Melina and Alex, pending investigation. I was allowed to stay but was strongly advised to avoid speaking about it in the office. By Wednesday, people were talking. Whispers in the break room. Slack messages drying up. People who were warm with me a week ago suddenly turning cold. And then, Thursday, I get an anonymous message in my inbox. If you weren't good enough to keep your man, maybe stop blaming the woman who was. A letter. Dated 3 weeks ago. Addressed to HR. It was a draft. Unsent. Probably forgotten. It said, I don't know what to do anymore. I feel stuck. I thought he cared about me, but he's been ignoring me lately. I think I've made a mistake. I know it's wrong, but I thought we had something. He said his marriage was over. I believed him. Maybe I'm just the fool. It wasn't the smug voice she used with me at lunch. This was someone unraveling. I stared at the screen. I wasn't sure what to feel. Guilt? No. Anger? Still, yes. But something about it felt off. Later that day, my desk phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Natalie? Yes. This is Amanda. I'm calling from a firm that's representing Melina. We'd like to ask if you'd be willing to speak on record about the incident at RPM. What incident? The confrontation. We're preparing to file a harassment claim. I hung up. That night, I finally confronted Alex at home. He was sitting on the couch, drinking beer like it was any other night. I said, she's lawyering up. He didn't say anything at first. Then he looked at me and said, she's lying. Did you tell her you were separated? He looked down. I might have said we weren't doing well. Did you tell her I was your wife? He didn't answer. That was all I needed. That weekend, Melina posted something on Instagram. Black background. White text. Never trust women who smile to your face and stab you behind your back. That post got over 200 likes from people I worked with. Including Alex's assistant. Including 2 people I ate lunch with every week. Alex didn't come in. Apparently, he was still under review. But she wasn't. And when I passed her desk that afternoon, she looked up and smiled. Not kindly. Like a warning. There's more. A lot more. But I'll stop here for now. The next few days were a blur of fake smiles and stiff silence. Every step I took at work felt like I was walking on glass. People stopped inviting me to meetings. Some barely looked at me. Even the intern who used to bring me coffee was now suddenly too busy. Melina was acting like she ran the place. She laughed louder. Flipped her hair more. Left her desk to walk by mine more than necessary. I tried to keep my head down. HR told me to remain professional. I followed every rule to the letter. But she didn't. Then Wednesday came. Alex returned. He walked in around 10 a.m., looking tired and 10 years older. No one said much to him. I think some people were starting to feel uncomfortable, probably realized they didn't know the full story. He didn't come to my desk. Didn't look at me. I thought maybe he'd try to apologize again. Or explain. But nothing. He just disappeared into his glass office and kept the blinds shut. At 4:45 p.m., I was packing up to leave. I passed by his office, empty. Lights off. Then I noticed something on his desk. A white envelope. My name was written on the front in Melina's handwriting. I recognized the loop and the N. I should have walked away. I didn't. I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of printer paper. Typed out. The first line made me stop breathing. I know you'll read this before he does. I stood in the hallway, my hands shaking. The rest of the note said, you can lie to HR, but you can't lie to me. He doesn't love you anymore. Maybe he never did. You should have left when you had the chance. I'm not the villain. I'm just the one who told the truth. You're the one who's pretending. And at the bottom, in small letters, P.S. He told me you had a miscarriage last year. I'm sorry you couldn't give him what he really wanted. I almost dropped the letter. That part wasn't public. I never told anyone at work. I didn't even know Alex knew she knew. And now she used it against me. That night, I didn't cry. I went home, locked the door, and just sat on the floor in my living room for 2 hours. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just stared at the letter. She wanted me to fall apart. She wanted to destroy me. Not just take my husband. She wanted to erase me. The next morning, I called in sick. I needed space. I needed to breathe. But then, around noon, I got a text from one of the junior analysts, a guy named Devin who I'd mentored for the past year. Hey. I think you should see this. Attached was a screenshot from a group Slack channel. Someone had posted a link to a new anonymous blog post on Medium. Title, The Married Woman at Work Who Tried to Ruin Me. It was vague. No names. But the details? Too specific. It described a woman in her 30s, married to someone higher up, who set a trap for another woman after finding out about an office romance. It claimed the wife lured the younger employee into a dangerous situation under false pretenses, and that she manipulated HR to cover for her husband. There was more. Too much. It was obviously written by Melina, but posted anonymously. And people were reading it, liking it, sharing it. Some in the office even commented under it using fake names. I recognized their style, their jokes, their emojis. And then I realized Melina was flipping the story. She was making me the abuser. Later that week, I found out something even worse. A colleague from another branch, let's call her Janice, called me. She sounded hesitant, but said she wanted to give me a heads up. She told me Melina had recently reached out to her on LinkedIn. Said she was looking to transfer. Told her she was in a toxic environment and needed a fresh start. Then Janice dropped the real bomb. She said you were emotionally unstable and had a history of mental breakdowns. I was stunned. She added, she mentioned the miscarriage. Said it had really changed you. I felt sick. Melina was weaponizing every piece of pain I'd ever lived through. And yet, even after everything, Alex didn't do anything. On Friday, HR called me again. Same two people. Same bland room. This time, they were tense. We received an anonymous tip, the guy said. It's a photo. He turned his screen around. It was a grainy image from our office building's camera. From the night Alex stayed late 3 weeks ago. It showed Melina and Alex in the office kitchen. No audio. Just a visual. They were kissing. Full on. Passionate. The timestamp was 8:37 p.m. The same night Alex told me he was working on reports. I just stared at the screen. HR said they were reopening the investigation. That weekend, Melina vanished. No posts. No stories. No online activity at all. Monday morning, she didn't come in. By noon, word started spreading that she had taken a leave of absence for personal health reasons. But I didn't believe it. Not after what happened next. I came into work Tuesday and found an envelope on my chair. No name. No handwriting. Just a USB stick inside. I plugged it into my personal laptop at home that night. It had a single file. A video. Of Melina. Crying. Recording herself on her phone. The first line? If anything happens to me, I just want people to know I didn't lie. That's where I'll stop for now. This isn't over. There's more. And it's worse than you'd think. It gets darker. That night, I watched the video on the USB drive over and over again. It wasn't long. 2 minutes, tops. Melina looked tired. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept. She was sitting on the floor, back against a wall. Her makeup was smeared. She said, if anything happens to me, I just want people to know I didn't lie. I made mistakes, I know that. But he promised me things. He said he was leaving her. He said we'd go to Boston together, get a fresh start. But now he's pretending I meant nothing. He won't even look me in the eye. I thought he loved me. She started crying halfway through. And now HR thinks I'm the problem. Everyone does. But he's the one who started it. He's the one who said I should keep it quiet. She didn't name names. But we both knew who she was talking about. At the end of the video, she stared into the camera and whispered, I'm so tired of lying for him. I saved the file. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. But I knew I couldn't let her rewrite the whole story, not when the truth was right in front of me. The next day, I showed it to HR. Alex was presenting. He was walking through campaign results when the door opened. And Melina walked in. She looked pale but determined. People stared. The room went quiet. HR had told her to stay home until the investigation closed. She didn't care. She walked right to the front of the room, stood next to Alex, and said, I'm sorry to interrupt. But I have something to say. Someone tried to stop her. She waved them off. Alex looked like he'd seen a ghost. She pulled out a flash drive. You all heard one side. Let me show you mine. She turned to plug it into the projector, but before she could, I stood up. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. You don't have to play yours. I pulled out my phone and said, let me play mine. I cast the video from my phone to the screen. And the whole room watched her face appear. Crying. Confessing. Saying everything she had tried to keep hidden. When it ended, the room was dead silent. Melina was frozen. Alex looked like he'd been hit by a car. Then, from the back of the room, someone clapped. Just once. A slow, sarcastic clap. It was Devin, the junior analyst. Guess that campaign pitch isn't the only thing full of lies. People started whispering. HR rushed in a minute later and asked everyone to clear the room. The fallout was fast. Alex resigned by the end of the week. He didn't fight it. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just packed up and left. Melina was gone too. Technically, medical leave. But she never came back. HR issued a new policy the next month: no more relationships between managers and subordinates. Zero tolerance. Some coworkers apologized to me. Others didn't. The assistant who liked all her Instagram posts. She was transferred. Devin and I still have lunch sometimes. He said, "You were right not to scream. You let the truth speak for itself." I moved out of the apartment that month. Alex asked to meet once, just once. We sat across from each other at a park bench in Logan Square. He said, "I didn't think she'd go that far. I didn't think you would go that far." I stared at him. "You didn't think at all." He sighed. "Do you still hate me?" I paused. "No. But I'll never love you again." He looked like he wanted to cry. I didn't. It's been 6 months. I still work at the company. I got promoted, actually. My boss said, "You handled everything with more dignity than most would." I don't talk about it much now. Some people still whisper. Some new hires ask me, "Weren't you the one from the story?" I just smile. Depends which version you heard. I learned something ugly through all this. That love can blind you, but betrayal? It clears your vision like nothing else. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust someone again. But I do know this: I survived. And that matters more than anything. I'm not hopeful. Not yet. I'm not broken either. I'm just here. Wiser. Louder in the quiet. And I'll never apologize for telling the truth. Not again.